Many are calling to defund the police and redirect that money to programs, social programs that would actually help empower disenfranchised communities. And some are asking, well, how do you do that exactly? And what you should be looking into is how much money Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd in broad daylight, can expect to receive from his pension, even if he is convicted of second-degree murder. So he actually stands to collect somewhere between 1 million to 1.5 million in his pension. And it doesn't matter that he's been fired. It also doesn't matter if he gets convicted of second-degree murder. Chauvin, according to CNN, still stands to benefit from a pension partially funded by taxpayers. While a number of state laws allow for the forfeiture of pensions for those employees convicted of felony crimes related to their work, this is not the case in Minnesota. So the Minnesota Public Employees Retirement Association confirmed to CNN that 44-year-old Chauvin would still remain eligible to file for his pension as early as the age of 50. While a number of factors are used to calculate the pension benefits, Chauvin would likely be eligible for annual payments in the ballpark of $50,000 a year or more if he chooses to start receiving them at age 55. So pensions for police officers are actually incredibly generous. They're partially funded by the workers themselves, meaning the cops themselves. And then there's a portion of it that's funded by taxpayers in the given city. And so some are questioning whether this makes sense, especially when many municipalities throughout the country are really strapped for cash right now. Well, they had been strapped for cash, and coronavirus didn't make the situation any better. And then, of course, more importantly, there's the moral question of whether it makes sense for someone like Chauvin, who could be convicted of second-degree murder, to be able to collect these types of benefits.
Yeah, so we're going to ask you guys about the more difficult part of this question in a second. The easy part is, yeah, every jurisdiction should have a law saying that if you are not just a cop, but firefighter, teacher, whatever kind of public employee, and you're convicted of corruption or murder or abuse, something along those lines, you should not get your pension. Now you should get back the money you put in, even if you're convicted of anything. But having the taxpayers pay for someone who committed a brutal murder in some jurisdictions is just corruption or child molestation. But not all jurisdictions. So even in those cases, in some of the jurisdictions, some of the states, no, you still get your pension funded by the taxpayers. So no, that doesn't make any sense. That should be easy. But even then, the police unions are so overwhelmingly strong in so many different places that they just will not even entertain this. Ironically, it reminds me a little bit of the NRA. Now, the hard part of the question is, look, the taxpayers pay for all these public employees, and this is where the unions are the strongest, and they do negotiate terrific benefits for them. And I want, look, to be fair about this, because a lot of the headlines are that Chauvin could get $1 million or $1.5 million, and we just mentioned that because it's true. At the same time, that is the accumulation of 20 or 30 years of pension at a minimum of $50,000. I think, given the structure of his pension and given the fact that he almost certainly did overtime throughout those years, he's probably going to get significantly more than $50,000. But that being said, it's not like he gets a lump sum of $1 million. Congratulations, you murdered George Floyd. Here's $1 million. That's not how it works. Okay, so let's be fair about that. So now the super difficult part is, this is why a lot of the unions work with the Democratic Party, because it seems like a mystery to a lot of folks. Why do they support corporate Democrats? The unions, honestly, with the big companies, get their asses handed to them by the giant companies, and the Democrats help the companies and not the unions. So it's always been a giant mystery. Why the hell do the unions ever work with Democrats, especially the corporate Democrats? Progressives, I totally get, because progressives are ideologically aligned. And the answer is partly because of the public sector unions, because those the Democrats do control in Democratic areas. Now, the funny thing is the teachers union usually backs the Democrats more than anybody else. But the teachers get their asses kicked left and right throughout this country and almost never get wage increases. But the police union is the strongest, and they get whatever they want. And that's part of this story.
Yeah, and just to buttress your point about how it's not like, he worked for a year and he's going to get this $1.5 million pension. There were, of course, other cops involved in what happened to George Floyd. They've also been charged and will be prosecuted. Two of those cops were actually rookies, so they are not going to receive a pension. But the third cop worked for some time, and he's likely to receive a pension as well. It remains to be seen what that number is. I haven't seen any analysis on that yet. So they do have to work a certain amount of time in order to collect that benefit. And the amount of the pension is dependent on how long they've worked and how much money they've put into it. But I actually wanted to go back to what you said about, well, they should get the money that they put into their pensions refunded back to them. I thought about that, and I'm kind of indecisive on that, because Derek Chauvin in particular had so many dozens of complaints regarding police brutality against him in his career. So the argument would be, well, it's not fair. He worked, he earned that money, and he put it toward his pension. He should get that money back. But what kind of work did he engage in? It seems like he got involved in a lot of various cases of police brutality. And can you really make an argument that he deserves to get that money refunded to him? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I just find it, it's not like, oh, he was a construction worker and he labored hard and he did a great job and he earned that money. With Chauvin, who knows, what he's done to members of the Black community in Minneapolis that we don't even know about.
Yes, Anna, obviously I hear you on that. And a dollar going back to Chauvin, even if it's his own money, is painful to anybody in the country, let alone this giant sum that he might get. The 15 violations show you what kind of a terrible person Chauvin is. But to me, what it shows you more is how sick and corrupt the system is. I mean, anybody else gets 15 violations at work and you're a goner. But the police union is untouchable because they pay the Democrats, and the Republicans like it that they, batter African Americans and the poor and only protect the wealthy in this country. So you have a lethal combination of in this case, quite literally, of a union so strong that it takes anything it wants from the taxpayers. It then turns around and abuses the great majority of the taxpayers, and everybody bows down to them. So part of what we're going to ask you guys, because I think this portion of it is difficult. The Chauvin part is not difficult, but are cops getting paid too much in this country? And so we're tyt.com/polls/cops in this case. And by the way, if you go to tyt.com/polls, you'll be able to see all of our polls, and you can vote on as many of them as you want. And look, on the one hand, you say great job by the union by getting them terrific pensions. I mean, how many of us would like to start getting $50,000 a year for not working at a bare minimum at the age of 55? That sounds amazing. I went 15 years not making $50,000, and that was with a ton of work, an unbelievable amount of work. So, and a lot of
God, let us whisper of a dream. $50,000, if you knew you're going to retire and you're going to have a comfortable, retirement, that sounds pretty damn good. Anyway, sorry. I was fantasizing for a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, again, to me, it's a hard question, especially if you're on the left, because on the one hand, you want to congratulate the union for doing a good job sticking up for their members, right? On the other hand, this is not coming out of some giant public corporation like Amazon. It's coming out of our pocket. And it's going to these guys who feel like they're above the law and oftentimes do abuse the rest of us. So it's a tough question.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.